The frozen shelter, the wind outside was strong, cold, and wild. Snow hit the broken walls of the shelter like sharp ice knives. Inside that ruined metal shell, a young alien woman sat on the ground with her small daughter wrapped in her arms. Her name was Yari, and her daughter's name was Luma. Luma was only 5 years old. Her thin arms were like sticks, her cheeks pale and dry, her eyes closing slowly. Her lips had turned blue and her tiny body shook without stop. Yari looked down at her and held her tighter. She had already taken off her thick coat and wrapped it around Luma. Then she took off her scarf, her gloves, and even her shirt. Only. Her thin dress remained. She didn't care. The only thing that mattered was saving her daughter. The shelter had no power, no fire, no heat. It was a forgotten outpost left after the war. Long ago, the humans and the alien races had fought on this frozen planet. Now the war was over, but no one returned for those who were left behind. Yari whispered to her daughter, "Just hold on a little longer, my little light, please." Luma did not reply. She had stopped talking 2 hours ago. Her eyes blinked slowly, like sleep was pulling her away. Yari rubbed her back, trying to create heat with her hands, but her fingers were going numb too. Her own skin had started to freeze. She could no longer feel her feet. Outside, the storm screamed louder. Snow piled up at the entrance of the shelter. The metal door had been ripped off days ago by wind. Yari had used broken boards and parts of her tent to block it, but the cold still crept inside like a silent ghost. Then, a sound came from outside. It was not the wind. It was something heavy, crunching the snow. Yari's ears twitched. Her eyes went wide. She pulled Luma close, wrapping her arms around her tiny body like a shield. She had no weapon, no strength to fight. If it was a beast, she would die. If it was a soldier, they might take Luma away. Her heart beat fast with fear. The sound came. Closer. A light moved behind the snow wall near the shelter door. Then something slammed hard against the wood. Once, twice, then a crash. The door broke open. Cold air blasted into the room like a monster's breath. Yari shut her eyes, ready for death. But instead of claws or guns, she heard a voice. "Is someone inside?" the voice asked. Deep, clear, human. Yari opened her eyes slowly. A tall man stood in the doorway. His armor was silver and black, marked with the symbol of the human peace force. Snow melted off his shoulders. He held a glowing red emergency pack in one hand and a heat lamp in the other. Warm air followed him like a wave. The man stepped forward. His eyes locked on Yari, thin, pale, shivering, almost naked, and holding a frozen child. Without asking, he dropped the heat pack on the floor. A wave of warmth filled the room. The frost on the walls began to melt. He knelt down beside her. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said. Yari tried to speak, but her lips were stiff. Her voice cracked. "My daughter?" He looked at the child. Her breathing was slow, weak. He opened his armor pack and pulled out a thermal blanket. He wrapped it around Luma and then another one around Yari. He took out a small heater and turned it on, placing it next to them. "You're safe now," he said. I looked at the man. His face was serious, his hands gentle. He pulled off his gloves and rubbed Luma's hands to help her blood flow again. "Why did you help us?" Yari asked in a weak voice. The man paused. "Because I was sent here to find signs of life," he said. "But I didn't expect to find someone still fighting to keep a child alive with nothing but her body." Yari's eyes filled with tears, but they didn't fall. She had no water left in her body for that. "What's your name?" the man asked. "Yari," she whispered. "She's Luma," he nodded. "I'm Dane, and I'm going to get you both out of here." For the first time in days, Yari felt something inside her chest, not just heat, but hope. Dane adjusted his cum link. "Command, this is Dane. I found 2 survivors, one adult, one child, both alive. I'm bringing them in." Yari looked at him as his voice echoed into the air. She didn't know what would happen next, but she knew this. The moment Dane walked into that shelter, the cold was no longer her enemy. She wasn't alone anymore. Her skin was warm, but her heart was still frozen. The human man named Dane walked through the deep snow, holding Luma close to his chest while Yari followed behind, wrapped in a thermal coat. His ship was parked half a mile away, hidden under camouflage netting near the mountain slope. Each step was heavy, but the heat of purpose pushed him forward. Yari's legs were weak. Her body had been cold for too long. Still, she didn't ask to stop. She couldn't. Her daughter was alive because of this man, and she didn't want to slow him down. But something inside her stayed silent, not her lips, but her heart. She didn't trust humans, not fully. Not after the war, not after what they did to her village. But now, one of them had saved her child. She was confused, lost between old pain and new hope. When they reached the hidden ship, Dane pressed a panel and the side opened. Warm air rushed out, and soft yellow lights lit the ramp. The inside was clean, small, and warm like a safe cave. He gently laid Luma on a medical bed. Machines beeped and scanned her body. Dane moved quickly, adding oxygen support and placing warm gel pads around her. Yari stood at the edge of the room, not touching anything. Her eyes moved from Luma to the blinking lights. She had never seen this kind of care before. Not for someone like her. "Your daughter will recover," Dane said. "She's strong." Yari didn't reply. Dane turned to her. "You need rest." "Too. Come sit." "I'm fine," she said. "You're not," he replied. Opening a seat and offering her water, she took the bottle, but didn't drink. "Why are you really helping us?" Dane looked at her, his expression calm but serious. "Because I've seen death. I've seen people freeze in their sleep, children starve while soldiers walked past them. I told myself, if I ever had a chance to do something right, I wouldn't walk away." Yari stared at him. He didn't speak like a soldier. He spoke like a man who had lost someone too, but her voice turned cold again. "What if someone gave you an order to leave us behind?" "I wouldn't follow it," he said. Silence filled the ship. Then the monitor beeped. Luma's body temperature was rising. Her breathing became stronger. She moved her fingers. A small sound escaped her lips. "Mama." Yari ran to her and knelt by the bed, holding her daughter's hand. Warm tears fell onto Luma's fingers. The girl opened her eyes weakly and smiled. "I knew you'd keep me warm," she whispered. Yari's voice shook. No, it was him, the human. Dane stood a few steps away, watching quietly. Luma looked at him and smiled again. "He's warm too." Yari didn't know what to say, but for the first time, she didn't feel like running. Just then, Dane's communicator beeped again. A voice came through, sharp and cold. "Officer Dane, return to base immediately. Leave all non-human subjects behind. That is a direct order." Yari's body froze. Her heart dropped. Dane stared at the communicator, jaw tight. Yari grabbed her daughter close, her voice low. "You said you wouldn't leave." He didn't answer yet, but his next choice would change everything. He disobeyed his command for her. The voice from the communicator still echoed in the air. "Leave the non-human subjects behind. Confirm return alone." Inside the ship, silence took over. Yari held her daughter tightly. Her breath became short. Her eyes watched the human man Dane as he stood still, staring at the glowing communicator in his hand. The warm air inside the ship now felt heavy. Every second ticked louder in her head. She whispered, "They'll make you choose." Dane didn't move. He was trained to follow orders. Every mission had rules. Every action was logged. Helping alien civilians was not part of the protocol, not after the war agreements. Saving a child, saving her mother, it could be called betrayal by his own kind. But then he looked at the child on the bed. Luma was sleeping peacefully now, her body wrapped in warmth and safety. Her little chest rose and fell with slow breaths. She looked like someone who had just been pulled back from the edge of death. Dane closed the communicator. He didn't reply to the order. Instead, he turned to Yari. "You're not cargo. You're not numbers. You're a mother, and she's just a child." Yari was still frozen in fear. "So, what will you do?" "I'm changing course," he said. "I'm taking both of you to the safe zone on my own." She couldn't believe it. "They'll punish you. Maybe even strip you of your rank." "I've made my choice," he said. He walked to the control panel and tapped a new destination. The screen glowed red, off-grid coordinates. A hidden camp run by outlaws, rebels, and peacekeepers who had left the war. It wasn't legal, but it was safe. The engines hummed. Yari slowly stood up, still holding her daughter's hand. "Why would you risk so much for strangers?" she asked softly. Dane looked at her. "Because no one did it for me when I was a child." Yari stepped closer, unsure of what to say. Her body was still weak, but her heart had started to beat. Faster. This man, this human, wasn't like the others she had known during the war. He saw her pain. He didn't look away. The ship lifted off from the snow-covered ground. Through the small window, the frozen wasteland began to fade behind them. The sky was dark, but ahead, a faint light blinked on the horizon dot inside the ship. Dane gave her a small food pack. "Eat this. It'll help you recover." She took it quietly, watching him work at the controls. He was focused but calm, like he had done this 100 times. But Yari knew this was not a normal mission. He had just turned his back on his own people. For her child. Then Luma stirred. Her voice was soft. "Mama, are we flying?" Yari smiled for the first time in days. "Yes, we are." Luma looked at Dane. "Is he taking us to the stars?" Yari looked at Dane too. He smiled and said, "No, little one. I'm taking you somewhere warm." But the moment didn't last long. A warning light flashed red on the control panel. Dane's eyes narrowed. A small drone was following them. A scout from the human command base. Silent, watching. "They're tracking us," he said. Yari stood. "What will you do now?" "I'll shake them off," he said, "but it won't be easy." The calm journey had ended. The next moments would decide everything, freedom or capture. And once again, the man who chose to help them would have to fight for that choice. Asterisk. The chase across the frozen sky, the ship shook as Dane pushed the controls forward. The engines roared louder, heating the frozen air around the small craft. Behind them, the tracking drone moved fast, its red eye blinking with warning signals. It had locked on to them. Inside the ship, the warmth had turned tense. Yari sat beside her daughter, her hand gripping the seat rail. Luma held her mother's other hand, her small fingers still weak but warmer than before. The girl didn't understand the danger, but Yari did. "They're still behind us," she said. Dane didn't look away from the controls. "I know. If they send a full patrol, we won't have long." The drone sent out a pulse, a signal, to call reinforcements. Dane saw it on the radar. 3 more ships had launched from the base. Fast, armed, and coming straight toward them. Yari's heart dropped. "You said we were going somewhere safe." "We still are," Dane replied, his voice steady. "But we have to lose them first." He pulled a lever, and the ship dived low, dropping under the thick clouds and flying close to the frozen surface of the planet. Snow and ice rushed past the windows like waves. Below, sharp mountains and broken war machines dotted the land, silent ghosts of battles long gone. The drone followed, faster than expected. Dane narrowed his eyes. Hold on. He turned sharply to the left, flying between two high cliffs. The ship tilted, and Yari gripped her daughter tight, shielding her body with her own. The drone followed through the canyon, closing the distance. Its wings opened and small rockets locked onto Dane's ship. "Dane, it's charging a shot," Yari shouted. He pressed a button and countermeasures fired out tiny hot flares and fake signals. The rocket flew past them and exploded in the snow behind, shaking the ground. "That was too close," he muttered. Luma peeked from behind her mother. "Are we going to crash?" Dane answered quickly, "Not while I'm flying." Yari's eyes studied him, his focus, his speed, his calm under pressure. He wasn't just helping them out of guilt. He was fighting to protect them like his own. The drone began charging again. But this time, Dane had a plan. He flew the ship toward an old battlefield, a place where hundreds of wrecked machines and broken starcrafts were scattered like grave markers. The radar became noisy, full of signals and interference. The perfect cover. He weaved through the wreckage, dodging broken metal wings, rusted tanks, and shattered towers. The drone lost visual contact for a moment. Dane slammed a switch. "Now!" He cut the main power for a second, dropping the ship's heat signal. The drone zipped past them, searching, confused. Dane reignited the engines and pulled the ship behind a giant fallen cruiser. The drone flew forward without seeing them. In seconds, it disappeared into the cloud ahead. Silence returned. Yari's chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. Did we lose them? Dane checked the radar. For now. But we need to keep moving. The safe zone is still far. He flew the ship up again, higher and higher into the sky, avoiding the patrol path. The stars began to peek through the clouds above. A thin line on the screen showed the edge of the human control zone. Beyond it, they could find allies, maybe even peace, but time was short. The ship's engine had taken damage from the sudden dives. A warning light blinked orange. "We need to land and repair," Dane said. Yari looked worried. "Land? Where?" He tapped the screen. "There's an abandoned dome nearby, used by traders before the war. We'll hide there and fix what we can." Yari glanced at her daughter, now asleep again. "She needs more rest too." Dane nodded. "Then we make that place our shelter, just for the night." As the ship disappeared behind the mountains, the sky behind them glowed with the red engines of search ships, scanning, searching, hunting. But for now they had escaped. And in that brief moment, Yari looked at Dane and asked, "Do you always go this far for strangers?" He looked at her, a rare smile forming on his face. "Only when they stop feeling like strangers." The dome where hearts began to thaw, the abandoned trade dome, echoed with lonely sounds. Metal beams groaned in the night wind. Faint red lights flickered like tired stars. Every shadow felt alive, and watching Dane guided the damaged ship through. The torn roof, landing between rusted cargo walkers and empty fuel drums, the engines hissed, then fell silent. Steam floated into the cold air like slow ghosts. Yari stepped down the ramp first. Her bare feet touched dusty metal tiles still warm from the ship exhaust. She held Luma close in a blanket. The child stirred. Her cheeks showed a little color, but her eyes stayed closed. Soft breaths rose and fell with a steady rhythm. Dane carried a repair kit and a lamp. His voice low but firm. "We have a few hours before the patrols sweep this sector again. I will fix the thrusters and boost the shields. You should rest, find water, maybe food." Yari nodded. Yet her eyes moved around the vast dome. Piles of crates formed crooked towers. Broken vendor stalls crawled with frost. A collapsed hologram screen lay across the floor like fallen glass wings. Nothing here felt safe, but it was warmer than The outside storm, she found a spot behind stacked supply cases, spread an emergency blanket, and placed Luma down gently. The child murmured, "Mama, still warm." "Yes, little light, stay warm." Yari kissed her forehead, then looked back at Dane working under the ship belly. Sparks jumped every time he welded a cracked plate. Blue light lit his face and armor. Shadows danced over his sharp jaw and steady eyes. A sudden bang echoed from the far wall. Yari froze. Dane grabbed his sidearm and moved between her and the sound. His lamp swept across the darkness. Two rodent-like scavenger bots skittered away. Their small metal feet clacked, disappearing into vents. "No threat," he said. "Just old cleaners stuck." In loop he lowered the lamp. Yari's breath returned. Yet her body kept trembling, not from cold this time, but from what she felt building inside, fear mixed with gratitude, worry tangled with new trust. She had given her clothes to save her child. Now a stranger had given up his future to save them both. She stepped forward. The lamp halo touched her face, her skin still pale but no longer gray. She lifted her hand, slow, shy. Fingers brushed Dane's cheek. The warmth surprised her. She whispered like a secret, "Why are you so warm?" His heart skipped. Battle armor sensors beeped from the sudden touch, but he ignored them. He replied, "Maybe because someone finally needs that warmth." For a long moment they stood still, breath meeting breath, the dim light hiding old scars on both souls. Yet the silence did not last. A distant roar rolled across the sky. Dane's wrist scanner flashed, patrol craft moving fast. The enemy search grid had shifted, closing in. "We cannot stay long," he said, returning to the thruster panel. He worked faster, tools clanged. Energy cells locked. Yari hurried back to Luma. She found a cracked water canteen, only a sip inside. She lifted her daughter's head and gave her the drop. Luma swallowed, eyes fluttered open. "Mama, are we safe now?" Almost little light. Almost. Yari noticed a broken med cabinet nearby. Inside she found a vial with an alien nutrient mist. Expired markings glowed dull, but still better than nothing. She sprayed a tiny cloud near Luma's mouth. The child inhaled. Skin gained a soft glow. Strength returning across the dome. Dane finished patching the shield coupler. He wiped sweat from his brow, then heard a soft click above. Sensor drones hung like silver insects under the dome roof, their red optics scanning the floor. One beam swept toward them. Dane killed his lamp, motioned Yari to crouch. The beam slid over crates, paused on the warm ship hull. Alarms inside the drone brightened. Dane whispered. They found the heat signature. He aimed his pulse pistol, fired. The bolt struck the drone lens. Sparks showered down. The machine spiraled, smashed against the floor. Metal echoed like a drum. Every other drone turned red in response. Dozens of lights ignited. "Converging run," Dane shouted. Yari scooped Luma, sprinted toward the ship ramp. Her feet slipped on frost. Dane covered her back, firing into the ceiling. Drones rained down, but still more came. Scanners shrieked inside the ship. Dane sealed the hatch. Alarms blared. He jumped into the pilot chair. Yari strapped Luma beside her own seat. Thrusters roared. The dome roof cracked. Snow and debris crashed around them. The ship punched through the opening, flames licking the torn edges. They shot into the night sky behind them. The dome lit up with red target rays. Patrol ships surged from the clouds. Missiles streaked white tails toward the fleeing vessel. Yari held her daughter, eyes wide. Dane pulled the yoke hard left. Shields flared, metal groaned, but he smiled at Yari, a fierce promise upon his lips. "I will not let them take you. Not today." And as the shattered moon cast silver light over the chase, Yari realized her frozen heart was melting, not from the ship heater, but from the fire of one human soul determined to protect theirs. Asterisk, if you get caught, they'll tear you. From us, the ship flew through a sky burning with engines and warning lights. Behind them, 3 patrol crafts chased like hungry beasts. Their weapons charged with each second, their red beams stretched across the stars. Hunting one small ship that dared to run, Dane gripped the controls tight. His jaw clenched as the dashboard screamed with alerts, shields low, engine strain rising, missiles locked. He had outrun patrols before, but never with passengers, never with a child who couldn't even lift her head, never with a woman watching him like she knew what this could cost. Yari sat behind him, arms wrapped around Luma, eyes locked on the back of his seat. Her lips moved with words she didn't speak. Fear filled her chest like fire. This man had risked everything for them, and now the skies were closing in. She leaned forward, voice sharp, voice soft. If you get caught, they'll tear you from. Dane didn't look back. I won't let that happen. They'll call you a traitor, strip your name, take your future. Lock you where no sun shines, she said. He answered with one hand on the throttle, the other pressing a command into the nav screen. I don't care what they take, they're not taking you. Outside, a missile sliced through the air, spinning toward them like a spear of fire. Dane pulled up hard. The ship flipped over a jagged ridge, snow sprayed across the lower hull. The missile exploded behind them. Shockwaves rattled every bolt. Luma whimpered. Yari held her tighter. Stay with me, little light, she whispered. Stay warm, we're almost free. The nav system beeped. Ahead lay a frozen canyon, deep, narrow, and wrapped in fog. A dangerous path, but the only place big ships couldn't follow. I'm going through the scar. Dane said. Yari's head snapped up. That's suicide. The winds inside crush ships like paper. He gave a half smile. Then we'll fly faster than the wind. The ship dove downward, entering the mouth of the canyon. Walls of ice towered on both sides. The sky vanished. Their world turned white and gray, full of echoes, and cold air of return was sharp. Every second brought new dangers, falling rocks, ice storms, frozen pillars that cracked and shifted. Yari closed her eyes. She could feel the ship shake, but her mind stayed on Dane's voice, his steady hands, the way he had looked at her when he promised not to leave. Behind them, one of the patrol crafts followed. The other 2 stayed out, waiting. The brave one came in fast, weapons ready. Dane's radar flashed. We've got company in the canyon. He looked to his left, then right. Then up. He saw it, a hole in the ice wall, a narrow tunnel hidden by fog. If he timed it right, they could vanish. He spun the ship sideways, thrusters flaring blue, and slipped into the gap. The patrol craft overshot the turn, slammed into the wall with a fireball that painted the canyon red. Dane's ship broke out of the tunnel and into open sky again. The stars welcomed them like an old friend, but the damage was done. Fuel cells low, engine coil overheating. Ship not built for another run. Dane set course for the neutral zone, a few miles ahead, protected by an old peace treaty. The humans couldn't follow without starting a war. As the ship glided through the last stretch of sky, Yari unbuckled, stepped forward, and placed a hand on Dane's shoulder. Her fingers trembled. You chose this for us, she said, voice quiet. You burned your name for strangers. Why? He looked at her hand, then up into her eyes. Because you're not strangers anymore, he said. Her lips parted. She wanted to say something more, something deep, but the ship jolted one last time. They were entering the landing zone. Dane guided it down gently. The ship touched solid ground. Lights turned green. Alarms stopped. They were safe. For now outside, the air was calm. A small camp stood beyond the rocks, built from broken parts and kindness. Survivors, outcasts, rebels, people who made their own PCRs stepped out first, her boots touching soil no longer frozen. She turned back and watched Dane carry Luma in his arms. Careful, strong, she whispered, "You were fire in the storm, and now you're home." Dane didn't reply. But in his chest, something melted too. He became the fire they needed. The sun had not fully risen yet, but the sky above the camp had begun to change. Soft gold slipped between dark clouds, and for the first time in many days, there was no sound of war machines, no red lights chasing. From behind, only silence and breath. Dane stood at the edge of the rocky field, staring out into the open valley beyond the cliff. His ship rested behind him, quiet and wounded. Like a soldier who had seen too much and finally found ground where it didn't need to run, Yari watched him from a distance, a soft wind moving through her hair. Her daughter Luma now slept inside a warm tent, surrounded by kind voices and food. That didn't come from rations. The child had smiled before closing her eyes, her cheeks full of color again, her chest no longer struggling to rise. The camp was made of those forgotten by systems, left behind by both alien governments and human. Command. A place where names didn't matter, only choices did. Survivors lived here, some with missing limbs, some with broken ships, all with stories like ashes, burned but not lost. Dane didn't speak much that morning. He had spent the night repairing his ship's comms, not to return, but to erase his signal, make sure no one could track the trail they left behind. He had wiped his own name from the network, turned off the last connection to the command that raised him. Now he was no one, and Frieri stepped beside him, her arms folded, her breath leaving small clouds in the cool air. "You don't have to stay," she said. "I know," Dane replied. "They'll call you missing, or worse, hunt you again when their war runs out of enemies." He nodded. Slowly. "I'm ready for that." Yari turned to face him. "But why stay?" Dane didn't answer right away. He looked at the camp behind them, a group of people rebuilding their own world with scrap and hope. And in one of those tents was a girl who had nearly died in his arms. A girl who now slept peacefully because he had chosen to burn the rules. Instead of following them, he looked at Yari, her eyes no longer guarded, her voice no longer full of ice. "She had found something here, just as he had, because I can be useful here," he said. "Not as a soldier, not as a name, just as someone who knows how to keep people warm." She smiled, the kind of smile that carried both sadness and strength. "Then stay. We'll need someone like you when the next cold storm comes." He turned fully to her now, his voice softer. "You kept your daughter alive with your own warmth. You nearly froze yourself for her. You didn't give up, and you didn't leave us," she said back. The space between them disappeared. Not with touch, not yet, but with silence that didn't need filling. From the hilltop, a child's voice called out, "Mama!" Yori looked back. Luma stood outside the tent, wrapped in a coat too big for her, but smiling wide. Yari ran toward her, lifting her into her arms. Dane watched them, something in his chest flickering, something that felt like purpose, like home, like fire that didn't burn but warmed later that day. The camp elders offered him a place to stay, tools to work with, systems to help manage, defenses to improve. He didn't say yes or no. He just started working. He patched old shield walls, repaired solar cells, showed children how to handle simple engines, gave away his rations, and shared stories only when Asked. Yari often sat nearby, Luma always close. And together they created something small but strong. At night, the wind still howled, but it no longer froze the heart. It danced around tents, touched faces, and passed gently over one man who had arrived as a stranger and stayed because he found warmth not in machines or orders, but in a mother's courage and a child's trust. And so the camp called him the Firebringer, the man who burned the sky to protect 2 lives and stayed to light the others. He had no rank now, no orders, but he had a place, and in that place he was needed. He was home.